Imagine waking up and realizing that an entire army marched all night just to kill you. It's not a battle. It's not a declared war. It's a silent siege, done on purpose, in the darkness, while you slept. Horses, chariots, archers, infantry. Everything positioned around a small town, without walls, without a garrison. A town that didn't even deserve to be on a general's map. And in the center of it all, a single man. Elderly, unarmed, no shields, no army, no escape route. The math was brutal. Thousands against one. And everyone there knew how this story would end. But this morning, around 850 years before Christ, on a hill called Dothan, this morning will become one of the most disturbing and at the same time most liberating scenes the Bible has ever recorded. Because what happened there shouldn't have been possible. This is the point where the situation spins out of control, but not on the side you imagine. To understand what happened that morning, we need to go back a few months in time. We need to understand why one of the most feared armies of the ancient Middle East decided to spend its energy to capture a single unarmed prophet. And the answer begins with a series of inexplicable military failures. King Ben-Hadad of Syria commanded one of the most respected armies in the region. We are not talking about an improvised troop. They were professional soldiers, trained cavalry, archers of deadly precision, chariots pulled by horses specifically bred for combat. A military apparatus that took decades to build. And his strategy was simple, elegant even. Ambushes at strategic points, narrow valleys, crossroads, mountain passes, places where the army of Israel would have no room to maneuver, no way to retreat, no way out. It worked every time, with everyone, except with Israel. Every time the Syrian king positioned his troops in a certain location, the Israelites simply didn't show up. He chose one valley. They took another path. He set a trap on one road. They went by a different route. Once, it could be a coincidence. Twice, maybe luck. But the biblical text says this happened several times. It was systematic. For a military commander, there is no situation more dangerous than this. Because if the enemy knows your strategy before you execute it, you have already lost the war before the battle begins. It's not defeat by force. It's defeat by exposure. From here, everything changes. Because frustration turned into paranoia. Ben-Hadad gathered his generals and advisors, the men who participated in the kingdom's most secret decisions, and he made a direct accusation. There was a traitor among them. Someone was passing information to the king of Israel. It was an extremely serious accusation. In those days, espionage was punished with immediate death. No trial, no second chance. The officers looked at one another. Silence took over the room, until one of them spoke. And what he said completely changed the nature of the conflict. There was no traitor. The problem wasn't military, it was spiritual. In Israel, there was a prophet named Elisha. And this prophet was able to know, in detail, the words the king of Syria spoke inside his own bedroom. They weren't spies. They weren't scouts hidden in the mountains. The prophet simply knew, and he told everything to the king of Israel. Suddenly, everything made sense. Every frustrated ambush, every plan that failed, every useless movement. The Syrian king wasn't fighting an army. He was fighting someone who knew his secrets even before he left the palace. And that was something that swords, horses, and chariots simply couldn't solve. The king's decision was immediate. If the problem was one man, the solution was simple. Eliminate the man. Spies were sent. Informants were interrogated. Messengers crossed the roads of the region. The answer came quickly. Elisha was in Dothan. Dothan was not a fortress. It didn't have imposing walls or a relevant military garrison. It was a small town in a hilly region, about 19 kilometers north of Samaria. An easy target. Any experienced commander would send a small detachment. Ben-Hadad did not send a detachment. He sent an army, horses, chariots, heavy military force. An absurdly disproportionate mobilization to capture a single elderly man who carried no weapons. But to the Syrian king, it made sense. If Elisha remained free, no military strategy would work ever again. And that risk could not exist. That night, the troops marched in silence. Night movements were common in antiquity, avoiding the heat of the day, preserving the strength of the horses, and above all, reaching the target before any warning could spread. The Syrian soldiers crossed dark valleys, climbed the hills around Dothan, and positioned themselves while the town still slept. Cavalry at the exits, chariots on the main routes, infantry closing every access. When the first glow of dawn touched the hills, the siege was already complete. No way out, no messenger, no chance of escape. And it was Elisha's servant who saw it first. He opened the door that morning just like any other day. Perhaps to get water, perhaps to start the routine before the sun came up. But when his eyes adjusted to the dim light of dawn, what he saw didn't seem real. Horses on all sides, the glint of weapons reflecting the first light of day. Soldiers in siege formation, the hills taken over, chariots blocking the exits, archers on the high points, Syrian flags fluttering in the wind, shields aligned, spears raised. The panic was immediate. The servant backed away, almost stumbling. He ran to Elisha and woke him with a sentence that carried all the desperation of that moment. "Alas, my master, what shall we do?" It wasn't a question. It was a cry of helplessness. The math was brutal. An entire army against 2 unarmed men inside a mud brick house. There were no walls. There were no allied soldiers. There was no escape route. Everything pointed to the end. But Elisha's reaction followed no human logic. He didn't stand up startled. He didn't run to look through the windows. He didn't start making escape plans. His voice came out calm, steady, as if absolutely nothing had changed. "Do not be afraid, for those who are with us are more than those who are with them." The servant must have looked around, confused. Inside the house, he saw 2 men. Outside, hundreds, perhaps thousands, of armed soldiers. The math didn't add up at all. Either Elisha had gone mad, or he knew something that human eyes simply couldn't see. Then Elisha prayed. But it wasn't a prayer asking for deliverance. It wasn't a cry for protection. It wasn't a request for God to destroy the enemy army. The request was simple, direct, and completely unexpected. "Oh Lord, please open his eyes that he may see. Not deliver me, not destroy the enemy, not save the 2 of us." The prayer was about the perception of another person. It was about revealing what was already there. And then something changed before the servant's eyes. There was no thunder. There was no earthquake. No sound of battle. The only thing that changed was the vision. It was as if a veil had been removed. Suddenly, the hills around Dothan were no longer empty. The entire mountain was covered. Horses of fire, Chariots of Fire, a celestial army positioned in battle formation between the city and the Syrian troops. The celestial chariots were not like the Syrian chariots of war. There were no wheels of wood, iron, or leather. They seemed made of pure flame, luminous structures pulsing like living embers, as if fire itself had taken the shape of a vehicle. Organized, aligned, in position. The servant realized something even more impressive. The celestial army was not inside the city. It was not around the house. It was between Dothan and the Syrian army, like a living wall, as if every hill had been taken by an invisible force that had simply always been there, hidden behind a veil. On the outside, soldiers of flesh and bone, heavy armor, horses tired from the night march. On the other side, beings that seemed made of fire and light, immune to tiredness, immune to fear, immune to human limitations. In that instant, the human threat lost its size. The Syrian army hadn't changed in number. The chariots were still there. The spears remained pointed at the city. But the reality was different, because now the servant knew something that no Syrian soldier could imagine. They weren't surrounding the prophet. They were surrounded by an army that did not belong to this world. Elisha showed no surprise. For him, that was not a revelation. It was merely the confirmation of something he already knew. While the servant saw only the danger, the prophet always saw the protection. While the servant counted soldiers, Elisha knew the invisible army. The math had changed completely. It was no longer an army against two men. It was one army against another army. And the army of fire surrounded the army of flesh. And it is exactly here that the story takes a turn that no one expected. Because the celestial army did not move, the horses of fire did not advance, the supernatural chariots did not attack. The power was there, real, present, ready, but it was not used. No invisible sword fell from the sky. And instead of ordering an attack, Elisha prayed another prayer, a completely different one. The Syrian soldiers began to descend toward the city. For them, nothing had changed. Dothan remained defenseless. The target remained within the walls. The mission was simple: capture the prophet. As the troops approached, Elisha went out to meet them, not with a sword, not with an army, only with a prayer. Strike this people, please, with blindness. And in that instant, the entire army lost its sight. It wasn't an ordinary darkness. It wasn't just a lack of light. It was total confusion. Trained soldiers could not distinguish paths. Commanders did not know where their troops were. Horses became disoriented and agitated. Perfect military formations turned into chaos. The most feared war machine in the region became completely vulnerable, without a single sword being raised. Then something even more surprising happened. Elisha walked into the middle of the blind army. The very man they had come to capture was now standing before them, guiding their steps. And he said, "This is not the way, and this is not the city. Follow me, and I will bring you to the man whom you seek." It was true, technically. They were looking for the prophet of Israel, and the prophet was right there. But the blind soldiers did not know it, and with no choice, no vision, and no guidance, they trusted the only voice speaking with authority. And so the march began. It was no longer an army in war formation. There was no discipline, no alignment of shields. It was a disorganized column of blind men being led by the one they had come to capture. Every step uncertain, every stone in the path an obstacle. The army that had marched with pride during the night now walked in silence, depending completely on the voice of the enemy they imagined they were searching for. And none of them realized that with every step, they were being led into the heart of enemy territory. Elisha led the entire Syrian army for about 19 kilometers, from Dothan to Samaria, the capital of the Kingdom of Israel. An elderly prophet, leading thousands of enemy soldiers, blind and vulnerable, crossing valleys and hills to the center of adversary territory. The hunters being led by the hunted. When they arrived in Samaria, Elisha prayed another prayer. Lord, open the eyes of these men, that they may see. Their vision returned. The soldiers blinked, adjusted their eyes to the light, and realized where they were. Not in Dothan, not surrounding a defenseless city. They were inside Samaria, in the middle of the capital of Israel, surrounded now by the army of the King of Israel. The trap had turned inside out. The besiegers were besieged. The King of Israel saw the opportunity and asked Elisha twice, with an urgency that the text reveals, "Shall I strike them? Shall I strike them, my father?" It was the chance to eliminate a large part of the enemy army at once. An easy victory. Revenge for years of war. Elisha's response was immediate and completely unexpected. "You shall not strike them. Set bread and water before them, that they may eat and drink and go to their master." Instead of an execution, a banquet. The king of Israel prepared a great feast for the Syrian soldiers. Abundant food, water to quench their thirst, hospitality where there should have been blood. And then he sent them back. An entire army returning to Syria, with a story impossible to explain. They had been blinded, led into the enemy fortress, and instead of death, they received dinner. And the biblical text records the result. From that day on, the Syrian marauders did not come again to invade the land of Israel. The war did not end with a battle. It ended with a miracle and a table prepared for enemies. There is a detail that no one usually notices when reading this story. The celestial army did not attack. The horses of fire did not advance. The supernatural chariots did not crush anyone. The power was there, real, present, palpable. But it was not used in the way any general would expect. Victory did not come through destruction. It came through blindness, through guidance, through a banquet. This challenges human logic. If you have a celestial army at your disposal, the natural reaction would be to use it. Destroy the enemy, demonstrate power, ensure that no one else dares to attack. But in Dothan, the chosen path was different. To show power without using it. To win without killing. To transform enemies into witnesses instead of corpses. And that was not the only time this invisible army was present without intervening. Centuries later, on another night surrounded by soldiers, another man was also the target of a siege. Not in Dothan, in the Garden of Gethsemane. The soldiers arrived with swords, torches, and chains. One of the disciples reacted as any man would. He drew his sword. But the response was immediate. "Put your sword away." And then came words that directly echo the story of Elisha. "Do you think that I cannot appeal to my Father, and he will at once send me more than 12 legions of angels?" 12 legions, more than 70,000 celestial beings, ready to intervene with a single word. The same invisible army from Dothan was available that night. But this time, the army of fire remained silent. the same God. The same power. Two different decisions. Because in Dothan, divine protection delivered the prophet from the valley. In Gethsemane, it walked with him through it. Sometimes protection delivers you from danger. Sometimes it walks with you inside it. And both ways are protection. That morning in Dothan, Elisha's servant learned something that most people never truly learn. He was never alone, not for a second. The danger was real. The army was real. The fear was legitimate. But the reality he could not see was greater than everything his eyes showed him. And here is the point that impacts me most in this story. The celestial army was there before the prayer, before the request, before the servant opened the door. Elisha did not ask for God to send protection. He asked that the servant could see the protection that was already there. The vision was opened. The reality did not change. Think for a moment. How many times in your life have you looked at a situation and the math simply didn't add up? Surrounded by problems, by pressures, by people with more resources, more power, more influence. The math said there was no way out. And perhaps you reached the same conclusion as Elisha's servant. What shall we do? But what if the right question wasn't, what shall we do? But rather, what are we failing to see? Dothan teaches us that reality has at least two layers. The layer that the eyes see, armies, sieges, problems, crises. And the layer that remains invisible to most, until the right eyes are opened. And this truth crosses the centuries without losing its strength. Because the world we live in today also has its armies marching at night, its silent sieges, its brutal mathematics that try to convince us there is no way out. The form has changed. The nature is the same. No decisive battle is fought only on the plane that the eyes behold. Here is the question I want to leave with you before finishing. If your eyes were open today, to see that which is beyond what you can perceive, what would you find surrounding that which scares you the most? Think about that. If this content touched you in some way, if you stayed here until the end and felt that this story spoke to you, leave a like. It helps this video reach other people who also need to hear that they have never been alone. Comment below. What part of this story impacted you the most? The siege? The army of fire? The banquet in place of the execution? I really want to read what stayed with you. And if you are not yet a subscriber, subscribe now. Because there are many more stories like this to come. Stories that seem impossible, that challenge logic. And for that very reason, they need to be told. Until the next video,